Hello again, gamers. Welcome back to the Board Game Captain. I'm the Captain, and today I'm going to be reviewing and telling you about Vaesen Mythic, Britain, and Ireland. So this is an expansion book to the Vaesen role-playing game that I've already reviewed some time ago. I'm going to put a link to that review up here if you're interested in checking out the main game. This is not a complete role-playing game. This is an expansion to be able to play Vaesen in the Victorian era, England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, you know, the British Isles, that general region, and includes the use of lots of places and creatures, Vaesen from that area, as well as characters, adventures, and stories in that region. Because the main book, of course, is to play out in Victorian era Scandinavia, and usually most of that book is really geared towards the kind of mythic creatures and people and places of Scandinavia. So this book was sent to me for review by Free League Publishing. So I want to start by giving a big thank you to Free League Publishing for this copy of Vaesen Mythic, Britain, and Ireland to be able to use in my games and to read and to have fun with and to film some content with. Thank you, Free League Publishing. I do want to say I've got a ton of links in the description down below that you guys can check out at your leisure. There's a link to BoardGameCaptain.com, which is a great hub for all things Board Game Captain. There's a link to my Teespring store if you'd like to get yourself some cool Board Game Captain merch, t-shirts, mugs, etc. And there's a link to my Patreon if you're in a position to and would like to support the channel. All right, so let me open this up and tell you what comes in the book. First of all, I do want to say, as usual with Free League Publishing, we're talking about some top-notch production. This has a linen finish cover, beautiful artwork, old school thread binding, and you can see there, cloth bookmark. I absolutely love hardcover books with cloth bookmarks. Free League is one of the companies out there that I think is one of the ones that does some of the best production on their role-playing games. Absolutely love these. So as we open it up, the first thing we've got, of course, is the credits page. I'm sure I'm going to be showing this up on the screen. Now, this was had the lead writer of Graham Davis, but many other people worked on this game. So I do want to show this up there so you can see all the people who had a lot to do with bringing this game to be in your hands if you buy a copy. Next, we have a preface by Graham Davis where he discusses his history with fantasy tropes and role-playing games. He himself, of course, is British, so also has a close relationship with the British Isles. Then we get into Mythic, Britain, and Ireland, and we discuss here, you know, what is the world like? What creatures are here? What are the new things coming about because of the Industrial Revolution? How do they clash with age-old folk tales and mythology and lore and supernatural creatures in those areas? It also goes over important areas, important locations, important cities in the various nations of the United Kingdom and Ireland, as well as lots of famous mythical creatures from those areas and what they might be, references to other things from this book, or just localized versions of mythical creatures from the main Vaesen book. We'll also discuss in addition to the big cities, what rural life is like, what people are like living outside of the big cities in the countryside. This is a really good chapter in helping you to understand the setting for the most part. A general exploration of the British Isles in the Victorian era combined with, you know, the folklore and mythology of that region, you know, at a glance, a quick way to see it at a glance so that you kind of get the idea of what kind of storylines you're going to be getting into, what the world is like, etc. Then we have a nice big map of London with the River Thames down the middle, which is really cool, followed by a bunch of tables for new NPCs. They had tables like these in the main Vaesen book, but they use the opportunity to give you a bunch of new basic NPCs. You have actors, artisans, artists, athletes, clerks, counselors, engineers, explorers, factory workers, fishermen, gamblers, etc., etc., so on and so forth. Many of these are also usable back in the main Vaesen book if you'd like to transplant them and have these sort of characters existing in the Scandinavian portion of the world of Vaesen. Next, we have a section on celebrity encounters. Now, I love this section because it gives you the birth and death dates for lots of real famous people from Victorian UK and Ireland, as well as fictional characters. So you have people like Dr. Jekyll, like from Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, as well as Sherlock Holmes, fictional characters like them, and then other fictional characters from their works, whereas you also have, real people like Charles Babbage or, Chief Inspector Frederick Aberline. These are real people that played a big part in the culture of the time. Also, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote the Sherlock Holmes books, is here. So you can decide which fictional characters are real in your world or which real people also exist in your world. And they have a lot of them. They give you their birth and death dates, so you can get an idea, depending on what date you're playing in, how old they are if you want them to show up as NPCs. And this is great. I really like this a lot. And then we have a big section on societies and groups. Again, similarly, if you want members of the Freemasons or the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn to show up as NPCs in your game. And I love this. This is a wonderful resource. Then we have some mysterious places. These are specific locations where Vaesen are very likely to be because of the stories that are told about them. Again, great places to use things like the Giant's Causeway or Loch Ness or as an example, the Witch of Wookiee England or Shagbrook England, etc. These are really good. And then we have an exploration of the Fey worlds, the parallel worlds that you could accidentally slip into if you fall through a portal to Tirnanog, as an example. Fey places, yes, lots of examples of that because a lot of the creatures here are of or related to the Fey. There's a full exploration of the Wild Hunt and how versions of it also exist here in the British Isles, not just in Scandinavia. And then we have an exploration of the history of the society in the British Isles. And they are actually in better shape than they are at the start of your game in regular Vaesen, because if you read the regular Vaesen book, of course, the society had been destroyed and you were people looking to rebuild it. But not so in the British Isles. They're actually still around and doing pretty well. They have a functioning headquarters with abilities if you decide to start there. Then we have some new archetypes. So for the new archetypes, these, again, are ones that are not just good for being usable in the British Isles, in addition to the archetypes that were in the basic Vaesen book, but you could also, again, transplant these to Northern Europe. You have the athlete, the entertainer, the socialite. These are great. More archetypes is always good. I like that they add a few of these in. It's just a smattering. But it's nice. It's nice that they used the space to increase the size of your options. Next, we have supernatural creatures. Now, this is a fantastic place where we both go over alternate versions of creatures that already were given in Vaesen, as well as whole new creatures, some of which give you alternate versions that you could have show up in Northern Europe if you want them to be in the standard setting for Vaesen. Also, a lot of them will have multiple variations of themselves within the British Isles, because there might be a different version of them in Wales versus, say, Northern Scotland, or maybe even the Isle of Man. And for these, we have a wide variety of creatures, which are all really great. We have the Banshee, which is awesome. We have the Black Dog. We have the Bogarts. We have the Dullahan, which is kind of like a headless horseman type spirit. We have the Glaistig. I think that's how it's pronounced. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing any of these. We have the Hag. We have the Knocker, which is one that I quite like. We have the Leprechaun. And we have what is probably the most nightmare-inducing nightmare fuel creature in this entire book, the Nuckelavee, which is a creature I have never heard of, even as versed in mythology as I am. This is one I was not familiar with, and it's pretty terrifying, and I love it. We have the Pixie, we have the Puka, we have the Red Cap, one I was always a fan of as a kid, and we have the Selkie. Now again, in addition, then we have a section, like I said before, that goes over the creatures from Mythic Scandinavia and gives you alternate versions of them for the British Isles, or reasons why the standard versions of them would be existing in the British Isles during this time period. And this is really well done. I really like this a lot. Then we have adventures. So the first adventure we have in here, I'm not going to tell you the names or what happens in the adventures because I don't want to ruin anything for you. But the first adventure is a super straightforward, very basic adventure that involves solving it through brute force kind of thing, and it's okay. You know, it's got a lot of NPCs. It's a good read for getting to figure out some of your own adventures, and it's not a bad starting adventure if it's going to be like the first adventure for your player characters, because there's not a lot of complications, not a lot of twists and turns. It's pretty straightforward. But then the second adventure is miles better, in my opinion. The second adventure is much more interesting. And while it does have the option for still having kind of a brute force solving of this adventure, it is much more nuanced. And generally speaking, to get a really good ending, you don't want to just come in guns blazing. You want to use your intelligence, your wits, your know-how to figure out a way to a peaceful resolution. And I do like that a lot. And the final adventure is my favorite of the three. It is an adventure that involves lots of investigation, lots of finding clues and figuring out what is really going on. And they even have options in the third adventure in this book, which I love. They have options to make it even trickier, even harder to solve the mystery of what's going on. Love it. I think these adventures are real nice ramp up in complexity from simple to medium to advanced, and even with options to make it more advanced. And that is pretty awesome. And then following, we have a bunch of pages with handouts, letters, pictures, newspaper cutouts for each of the adventures, followed by expanded tables for all sorts of different things relevant to this book, or again, usable in the book itself, followed up finally by a bibliography and an index. Okay, so we are talking about a total of 153 pages. These are matte finish pages, color printing with lots of color photos. The pages themselves are white with black printing and a little bit of brown and gray, but with, again, full color pictures in the book. This is a sizable, and I do mean that, a sizable expansion to Vaesen. How would you use this book? How would you want to use this book if you're playing Vaesen? Well, the first and most obvious way to use this book is to do a Vaesen adventure in Victorian Britain or Victorian Ireland. Now, if you are from the British Isles or you are from the United States, where we have a long-standing tradition of fiction and movies that take place in Victorian era United Kingdom and Ireland, you'll be more familiar with that setting than you would, say, from the Victorian era Scandinavia. So there is a definite appeal there because of the greater familiarity of that time period and region for people from the United States and from Britain and from Ireland in regard to playing this game in that region. But in addition, if you're already playing Vaesen in Scandinavia, you can use this book to have your characters go across the channel to the British Isles. You know, they can travel down to France, cross the English Channel, go over to the British Isles on some specific missions, do some quests over there, run into different Vaesen. Maybe you've had adventures with a lot of the Vaesen already over in Scandinavia, and you want to introduce some new Vaesen. This is a great way to do it. You could take your Scandinavian heroes and take them over to the British Isles. In addition, another thing that this is great for is this is just a toolbox filled with lots more things. You have adventures, and all the adventures even have little tips on transplanting them to Scandinavia if you want them to be in Northern Europe. You also have lots of NPCs. You have new, archetypes, character classes, essentially. You have new monsters, new Vaesen. There are all sorts of great new things here. So just, even if you're not thinking of going to the British Isles or starting a new campaign that's in the British Isles, this could be a great toolbox to just add a lot of options, a lot of new stuff to your game in Northern Europe. So overall, would I recommend this book to you if you're a fan of Vaesen? And the answer is yes, I would recommend this book. This book is great. It was a great read. I really enjoyed it. There's a lot of great resources in here. I'm going to give Vaesen Mythic Britain and Ireland 8.5 stars out of 10. This is fantastic. There's a lot of great stuff going on here. I really enjoyed it. I think this is a wonderful addition to my collection. And being that Vaesen is such an awesome role-playing game, more content for it is definitely a good thing. So there you have it. Let me know what you thought of my review for Vaesen Mythic Britain and Ireland. Let me know in the comments down below. Let me know if you've gotten to check this out and what you thought of the book. And if you enjoyed this review of a role-playing game product and you'd like to see me do more like it, be sure to give it a like. Share it on all forms of social media. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Captain. That's Captain spelled with a K on YouTube. And until next time, game on.